In the quiet village of Eldridge, nestled between rolling hills and thick forests, lived a young woman named Mira. She was 22, with soft curves that her family never let her forget. Her father, Lord Harlan, was a stern man who ruled their estate with an iron fist. He had always favored her older sister, Elena, who was slim and graceful, the picture of what he thought a lady should be. Mira, on the other hand, spent her days helping in the kitchens or tending the gardens, her hands rough from work, her clothes simple and worn. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Mira sat by the fire, mending a torn dress. Her father stormed into the room, his face red with anger. "Mira," he barked, "get up!" "We have a guest." She stood quickly, brushing dirt from her skirt. In the hall stood a messenger from the mountains, his cloak covered in dust. He handed her father a sealed letter. Lord Harlan read it, his eyes narrowing. "The debt is due," he muttered. Mira didn't understand. Her family had long whispered about an old pact with the Dragon Lord of the Peaks, a fierce being named Drakon who guarded the ancient mountains. Legend said he was half man, half beast, with scales that shimmered like fire and a temper that could burn villages to ash. But those were just stories, or so Mira thought. That night, her father called her to his study. "Sit," he said, not looking at her. "Our family owes a debt to Lord Drakon. Years ago, when famine hit, he gave us gold to survive. Now he demands payment." Mira's heart raced. What does that have to do with me? He finally met her eyes, cold and distant. "He wants a bride. Someone to serve in his hall. Elena is promised to the prince. You're the one I'll send." The words hit her like a slap. "Father, no." "Why me? I've done everything you asked." "Because you're not like your sister," he said bluntly. "No one here will miss you." "It's for the family." Tears stung her eyes, but she held them back. All her life, she'd felt like an outsider in her own home. Her mother had died young, leaving her to face her father's disappointment alone. Elena teased her about her size, saying no man would want her. Now, it seemed true in the worst way. The next morning, Mira was bundled into a cart with a small bag of clothes. The driver, an old servant named Tom, gave her a sad look. "Be strong, lass. The mountains are harsh, but so are you." As they traveled up the winding paths, the air grew cold. Mira wrapped her shawl tighter, her mind swirling with fear. What if Drakon was as savage as the tale said? Would he hurt her? Or worse, ignore her like everyone else? After 2 days, they reached the base of a massive cliff. Tom stopped the cart. "This is as far as I go." "He'll come for you." Mira stepped out, her legs shaking. The wind howled, carrying the scent of smoke. Then a shadow fell over her. Looking up, she saw a figure descending from the sky, a man with broad shoulders, dark hair, and eyes that glowed like embers. Wings of leather folded behind him as he landed, transforming into a cloak. "I am Drakon," he said, his voice deep and rumbling. "You are the payment?" Mira nodded, too scared to speak. He was taller than any man she'd seen, with scars across his arms and a jaw set like stone. But his eyes weren't cruel. They were curious. "Come," he said, offering a hand. She hesitated, then took it. His skin was warm, almost hot. They climbed a hidden path to his lair, a vast cave carved into the mountain, lit by torches and filled with treasures, gold coins, jewels, and books stacked high. It wasn't the dark dungeon she imagined. It was like a home, with rugs and chairs. Drakon led her to a room with a soft bed and a window overlooking the valleys. "This is yours. Rest. We talk tomorrow." As he left, Mira sank onto the bed, sobbing quietly. She felt alone, rejected by her family, given to a stranger, but in the quiet, she wondered if this could be a new start. The next day, Drakon found her in the main hall, staring at a painting of a dragon in flight. "Do you fear me?" he asked. "A little," she admitted. "The stories say you're savage." He laughed, a low sound. "Stories are half-truths. I protect these lands. Your father borrowed from me, and now you're here. But I won't harm you." Over the weeks, Mira settled in. She cooked meals, finding the kitchen stocked with herbs and meats. Drakon ate with her, sharing tales of his life. He was old, centuries old, cursed to live as a dragon after a war long ago. "I chose solitude," he said one night by the fire. "People fear what they don't know." Mira opened up too. "My family never saw me. They thought I was too big, too plain." Drakon's eyes softened. "They were blind. You have a kind heart. That's rare." One evening, a storm raged outside. Mira huddled by the fire, shivering. Drakon wrapped a blanket around her. "You're safe here," he whispered. She looked up, seeing not a beast, but a man with loneliness in his eyes. For the first time, she felt seen. But trouble brewed. A letter arrived from her father, demanding she spy on Drakon for secrets. Mira tore it up, but doubt crept in. Was this her life now? Mira woke to the sound of wind whistling through the mountain cracks, her new home in Drakon's lair, feeling both strange and oddly comforting. The room he had given her was simple but warm, with thick furs on the bed and a small hearth that crackled softly. Sunlight filtered in through a narrow window, casting golden beams across the stone floor. She stretched, her body aching from the long journey, but her mind was clearer than it had been in days. For the first time in her life, she wasn't waking up to the judgmental stares of her family or the endless chores that reminded her of her place. She dressed in one of the simple gowns from her bag, the fabric loose and comfortable against her curves. Stepping out into the main hall, she found Drakon already there, tending to a fire in the massive central pit. He was shirtless, his muscular back marked with faint scars that looked like they had been clawed by something fierce. His dark hair fell over his shoulders, and when he turned, his ember-like eyes met hers with a quiet intensity. "Good morning," he said, his voice rumbling like distant thunder. "Did you sleep well?" Mira nodded, though her cheeks flushed a bit at the sight of him. "Better than I expected. This place, it's not what I thought it would be." He chuckled, a low sound that echoed off the walls. "Most expect a pile of bones and treasure hoards. I do have treasures, but I prefer books and quiet." She glanced around, noticing the shelves lined with ancient tomes, some bound in leather that looked as old as the mountains themselves. "You read a lot?" "When the world outside grows too loud," he replied, gesturing for her to sit at a wooden table laden with bread, cheese, and fresh fruits. "Eat. You need strength for today." Mira sat, her stomach growling. As she ate, she watched him move about the hall with a grace that belied his size. He wasn't the monster her village tales painted. He was thoughtful, almost gentle in his actions. "What happens now?" she asked between bites. "Am I just here to serve you?" Drakon paused, setting down a jug of water. The debt was for a companion, not a servant. Your father twisted the words, "But I won't. You can help if you wish, but you're free to explore, to learn. These mountains hold secrets." Her curiosity piqued. "Secrets? Like what?" He smiled faintly, revealing sharp canines that reminded her of his dragon nature. "Come with me and I'll show you." After breakfast, Drakon led her through a series of tunnels that wound deeper into the mountain. The air grew warmer, tinged with the scent of sulfur and earth. Torches flickered on the walls, casting dancing shadows. Mira's hand brushed against the rough stone, and she felt a strange warmth pulse through her fingers, like the rock was alive. They emerged into a vast chamber, the ceiling so high it disappeared into darkness. In the center was a pool of crystal-clear water, glowing with an inner light. Steam rose from its surface, and around it grew strange plants with leaves that shimmered like scales. "This is the heart spring," Drakon explained, kneeling by the edge. "It's fed by the mountain's fire. Legends say it awakens hidden powers in those who are worthy." Mira approached cautiously, dipping her fingers into the water. It was warm, soothing, and as she touched it, a faint glow spread up her arm. She gasped, pulling back. What was that? Draken's eyes widened slightly. "Interesting. Not everyone feels its call. Perhaps there's more to you than your family knew." She shook her head, confused. "I'm just Mira." "Nothing special." He stood, placing a hand on her shoulder. His touch was warm, reassuring. "We all have hidden depths. Let's see yours." Over the next few days, Drakon began teaching her about his world. He showed her how to navigate the mountain paths, pointing out edible berries and herbs that grew in the cracks. They spent afternoons in the library cave, where he read to her from old scrolls about dragons and their kin. Mira learned that Drakon wasn't born a dragon. He had been a warrior cursed by a sorcerer during a long-forgotten war. The curse gave him power, but isolated him, forcing him to live apart from humans. "Why help my family, then?" she asked one evening as they sat by the fire, sharing a meal of roasted venison. "Your grandfather saved my life once," he said softly. "He found me wounded after a battle and hid me. The gold was repayment, but debts have a way of twisting." Mira nodded, thinking of her own twisted family ties. "My mother used to tell stories about dragons. She said they were guardians, not destroyers." Drakon leaned forward, interested. "What was her name?" "Leora. She died when I was young. Father never talks about her." A flicker of recognition crossed his face, but he said nothing more. Instead, he changed the subject. "Tomorrow, I'll show you something special, but it requires trust." That night, Mira lay awake, her mind racing. She felt a pull toward Drakon, a warmth that went beyond gratitude. He saw her, not her size, not her plainness, but her. It was new, scary, but exciting. The next morning, Drakon took her to a ledge overlooking the valley. The wind whipped her hair as she stood there, heart pounding. "What now?" she shouted over the gusts. He stepped back, his form shimmering. In a burst of light and heat, he transformed. Scales erupted across his skin, wings unfurled, and before her stood a massive dragon, red and gold, with eyes like molten gold. Mira froze, awe and fear mixing, but then he lowered his head, nuzzling her gently. "Climb on," his voice echoed in her mind. With trembling hands, she climbed onto his back, gripping the ridges of his scales. They took off, soaring into the sky. The world below shrank, villages like dots, rivers like threads. Mira laughed, the wind stealing her breath. For the first time, she felt free. As they flew, something stirred inside her, a warmth in her chest, like the spring's glow, but stronger. Visions flashed, dragons in flight, a woman with her mother's face wielding fire. She gasped, clutching tighter. Drakon landed back at the ledge, shifting to human form. "What happened?" "You went still. I saw things," she whispered, "like memories, but not mine." He frowned, concerned. "The awakening." "It happens to those with dragon blood." "Dragon blood? Me? Perhaps your mother?" He trailed off. "We need to test it." Back in the lair, Drakon led her to the heart spring again. "Focus on the warmth," he instructed. "Let it flow." Mira closed her eyes, breathing deeply. The heat built, spreading through her veins. When she opened her eyes, flames danced in her palms, small, flickering, but real. Drakon's face lit with wonder. You have the gift? Rare for a human. But joy was short-lived. That evening, a knock echoed through the tunnels. Drakon tensed, sniffing the air. Visitors! At the entrance stood Elena, Mira's sister, with 2 guards. She looked pristine in her fine dress, her slim figure accentuated by jewels. Sister, she said sweetly, but her eyes were sharp. Father sent me to check on you. Mira's stomach twisted. I'm fine. What do you want? Elena glanced at Drakon, batting her lashes, just to see if the beast is treating you well. And perhaps to negotiate. Drakon growled softly. The debt is paid? Leave. But Elena smiled. Father has a proposal. He wants alliance secrets. In return, Mira can come home. Mira's heart raced. Home? But was it home anymore? She looked at Drakon, his face stormy. This was her first test. I stay, she said firmly. Tell Father no. Elena's face hardened. You'll regret this, fat fool. As they left, Mira turned to Drakon. She'll cause trouble. He nodded, pulling her into a hug. His arms were strong, safe. We'll face it together. That night, as they sat by the fire, Drakon brushed a strand of hair from her face. You're brave, Mira. She leaned in, their lips almost touching. The warmth inside her flared, matching the heat in his eyes. But outside, shadows moved. Elena hadn't left empty-handed. She had seen enough to plot. Mira's heart pounded as she pulled back from Drakon, the almost kiss lingering in the air like a promise. The firelight flickered across his face, highlighting the sharp angles of his jaw and the glow in his eyes. She felt the warmth in her chest pulse again, the strange fire that had sparked in her hands earlier. It was thrilling and terrifying, like standing on the edge of a cliff. She wanted to ask about it, to understand what it meant, but the memory of Elena's cold smile gnawed at her. Her sister's visit wasn't just a check-in, it was a warning. Drakon stood, breaking the moment. You should rest, he said, his voice softer than usual. Tomorrow, we'll train. If you have dragon blood, you need to control it. Mira nodded, her mind spinning. Dragon blood? She whispered as she returned to her room. The words felt impossible. Her mother, Leora, had been kind but ordinary, always humming songs about far-off lands and mythical creatures. Could she have been something more? Mira lay on her bed, staring at the stone ceiling, the weight of the day pressing down. She wasn't just a rejected daughter anymore. She was something else, something tied to this mountain and the man who lived in it. The next morning, Drakon woke her early. The air was crisp, the sky outside a pale gray. He led her to a wide, open cavern where the floor was smooth and marked with strange symbols etched into the stone. This is where I train, he explained, rolling up his sleeves to reveal more of his scarred forearms. If your power is waking, it could be dangerous. Fire doesn't care who it burns. Mira swallowed hard. What do I do? Feel the heat inside you, he said, stepping close. Don't fight it. Let it move, like a river. She closed her eyes, focusing on the warmth that had stirred yesterday. It was faint at first, like a candle's flame, but as she breathed deeply, it grew. Her hands tingled, and when she opened her eyes, small flames danced across her fingers again. She yelped, shaking them out. Drakon laughed, a rare sound that made her smile despite her nerves. Good. Now, aim for that. He pointed to a pile of dry wood in the center of the cavern. Mira hesitated, then extended her hands. The flames leapt forward, weak but enough to catch the wood. It smoldered, then burst into a small blaze. She gasped, stepping back. I did that? You did. Drakon said, pride in his voice, but it's raw. You need control. They spent the morning practicing. Drakon taught her to breathe steadily, to imagine the fire as part of her, not something separate. By noon, she could summon a flame the size of an apple and snuff it out with a thought. Her confidence grew, but so did her questions. Why me? She asked, as they sat on the cavern floor sharing a flask of water. Why do I have this? Drakon looked thoughtful. Your mother's name, Leora. It's familiar. There's a legend about a dragon clan, the Emberkin, who bonded with humans long ago. Some of their bloodlines linger. Maybe she was one. Mira's throat tightened. She never said anything. Just stories. Stories hide truths, he said. When this debt is settled, we'll search for answers. The word we warmed her more than the fire in her hands. He wasn't just her captor. He was becoming her ally. Maybe more. But the thought of Elena's visit kept her on edge. Her sister's jealousy was a poison, and Mira knew it would spread. That afternoon, Drakon took her outside again. The mountain paths were narrow, lined with jagged rocks and patches of moss. He showed her a hidden grove where wild flowers grew in bursts of red and gold, colors that matched his dragon form. This is my sanctuary, he said, sitting on a boulder. When the curse feels heavy, I come here. Mira sat beside him, the stone cool against her skin. Does it ever go away? The curse? He shook his head. It's part of me. But you make it lighter. Her cheeks flushed. I'm just a girl who got traded away. You're more, he said, his voice low. You're not what they said you were. She looked away, her heart racing. No one had ever spoken to her like this, like she mattered. For a moment, they sat in silence, the wind rustling the flowers. Then Drakon stood, offering his hand. Come. One more flight. This time, when he transformed, Mira climbed onto his back with less fear. They soared higher than before, above the clouds where the air was thin and the world felt endless. She laughed again, the sound swallowed by the wind. But as they circled back, she noticed something below, a figure moving through the trees near the mountain's base. Drakon, look! She shouted. He tilted his wings, diving lower. It was a man in a dark cloak, carrying a bow. A hunter, or worse, a spy. Drakon landed silently, shifting back to human form. Stay here, he whispered, creeping toward the figure. Mira's heart pounded, but her fire stirred, unbidden. She followed, ignoring his order. The man was crouched behind a rock, scribbling on a parchment. Drakon grabbed him, pinning him to the ground. Who sent you? He growled. The man sputtered. Lord Harlan? He wants your secrets, your weaknesses. Mira's blood ran cold. Her father. Of course. Elena's visit had been a distraction, a way to scout the mountain. She stepped forward, flames flickering in her hands. Tell him I'm done with his games, she said, her voice steady despite her fear. The man's eyes widened at the fire. Drakon released him, and he scrambled away, disappearing into the forest. Drakon turned to Mira, his expression a mix of anger and admiration. You shouldn't have come. But that was bold. I'm not hiding anymore, she said, surprising herself with her own resolve. Back in the lair, Drakon paced the main hall. Your father's plotting. He wants my hoard, my power. He'll use you to get it. Mira clenched her fists, the fire inside her simmering. Then we stop him. Together, Drakon stopped, looking at her with something new. Respect, maybe even affection. Together, he agreed. The next few days were tense. Drakon doubled his patrols, and Mira practiced her fire relentlessly, her flames growing stronger. She burned through logs, then stones, her control improving. Drakon taught her to sense the mountain's energy, to feel its pulse like a heartbeat. You're tied to this place now, he said one evening as they stood by the heart spring. Like me? Mira touched the water, the glow spreading up her arm again. Visions came. Her mother's face, a dragon's roar, a woman wielding fire against a shadowy enemy. She stumbled, and Drakon caught her, his hands steady on her shoulders. "What did you see?" he asked. "My mother," she whispered. "She was fighting." She had fire. Like me, Drakon's face darkened. Leora was no ordinary woman. I need to search the old records. If she was in Birkin, you're in danger. Danger? Mira's voice trembled. Dragon blood is rare, he said. Others will want it. Your power, your life. Fear gripped her, but so did determination. She wasn't the scared girl who left Eldridge. She was something more, and she'd fight to protect it. That night, as they sat by the fire, Drakon reached for her hand. "You're not alone, Mira." "Whatever comes, I'm here." She squeezed his hand, her heart full. For the first time, she felt like she belonged. But in the shadows, Elena's spies were watching, and her father's plans were only beginning. As the days turned into weeks, Mira's life in the mountain lair settled into a rhythm that felt almost normal. If normal could include summoning flames from thin air and sharing quiet evenings with a dragon lord. The initial shock of her powers had faded, replaced by a growing sense of purpose. She woke each morning with the sun streaming through her window, the air fresh with the scent of pine from the valleys below. Drakon was always up before her, preparing breakfast or tending to the lair's needs. He moved with a quiet efficiency, his broad frame filling the space without overwhelming it. One morning, Mira found him in the kitchen cavern, chopping vegetables with a knife that looked tiny in his hands. The room was warm from the hearth, filled with the aroma of herbs and simmering stew. She paused in the doorway, watching him. There was something human about him in these moments. The way he hummed a low tune, the concentration on his face. It made her heart ache in a good way. "You're staring," he said without looking up, a smile tugging at his lips. Mira laughed, stepping inside. "Can't help it. You're not what I expected from a dragon." He set the knife down and turned to her. "And you're not what I expected from a payment. Come, help me. We'll eat, then train." They worked side by side, her hands steady as she stirred the pot. Their fingers brushed occasionally, sending sparks through her. Not the magical kind, but something warmer, deeper. Over breakfast, they talked about small things. The birds that nested on the ledges, the changing colors of the leaves in the grove. It was easy, comfortable, like they'd known each other for years instead of weeks. After eating, they headed to the training cavern. Mira's powers were strengthening. She could now create a fireball the size of her fist and hurl it at targets Drakon set up. Old shields and stacks of rocks. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she practiced, her breaths coming in puffs. Drakon watched, correcting her stance with gentle touches. "Keep your feet apart," he said, his hand on her back. "Balance the fire with your body." She nodded, focusing. The flame shot out, shattering a rock into pebbles. She grinned, triumphant. "Better?" "Much," he said, his eyes shining. "You're a natural. But remember, power isn't just strength, it's control. Lose that, and it consumes you." Mira wiped her brow, sitting on the cool floor. "Like what happened to you? The curse?" He sat beside her, his shoulder brushing hers. "Yes, I was young, reckless, fought in a war I didn't understand. The sorcerer cursed me to teach me humility. Now, I protect instead of destroy." She reached for his hand, tracing a scar on his palm. "It suits you. Protecting." Drakon's fingers closed around hers, warm and firm. They sat like that for a while, the silence speaking volumes. Mira felt a pull toward him, a connection that went beyond words, but doubt lingered. Was this real, Or just the isolation of the mountain? That afternoon, Drakon suggested a break from training. Let's visit the grove again. You need fresh air. The path down was familiar now. Mira's steps sure on the rocky trail. The grove was in full bloom, flowers swaying in the breeze. They picnicked there, sharing bread and cheese. Drakon told stories of his past, adventures in distant lands, battles won and lost. Mira shared her own memories, childhood games with Elena, before jealousy set in, her mother's lullabies that now seemed like clues to her heritage. As the sun dipped lower, casting a golden glow, Drakon grew quiet. Mira, there's something I need to show you. In the library, back in the lair, he pulled an ancient book from the shelves, its pages yellowed and fragile. This speaks of the Emberkin, he said, opening to a faded illustration of a woman with fire in her hair, surrounded by dragons. They were a clan of humans bonded to dragons through blood rights, powerful but hunted for their gifts. Mira leaned in, her breath catching. The woman in the drawing looked like her mother. Same soft features, same kind eyes. This is her? Or someone like her, Drakon said. If Leora was in Birkin, she hid it well, perhaps to protect you. Tears pricked Mira's eyes. Why didn't she tell me? Fear, he said softly. The world isn't kind to those who are different. Mira nodded, wiping her face. Like me. All my life I felt different. Too big, too much. But here, I feel right. Drakon cupped her cheek, his thumb gentle. You are right. Just as you are. Their eyes met, and this time there was no pulling back. He leaned in, his lips brushing hers in a kiss that was soft at first, then deepening with the heat of unspoken feelings. Mira's world narrowed to that moment. The taste of him, the strength of his arms around her. The fire inside her flared, but it was matched by a different warmth, one that bloomed in her heart. When they parted, breathless, Drakon smiled. I've wanted to do that since you first stood up to me. Mira laughed, her cheeks flushed. Me too. But what now? Now, we face what's coming, he said, his expression turning serious. Your family won't stop. As if on cue, a rumble echoed from the entrance. Drakon tensed, standing. Stay here. But Mira followed, her flames ready in her palms. At the mouth of the lair stood a group of men, her father's guards, armed with swords and bows. Leading them was Tom, the old servant who had driven her here, his face grim. What do you want? Drakon growled, his form shimmering as if ready to shift. Tom raised his hands. Peace. Lord Harlan sent us to retrieve Mira. He says the debt isn't paid. Mira stepped forward, anger rising. The debt was me. I'm staying, one guard sneered. Your sister says you're bewitched. Come quietly, or we'll take you. Draken's eyes glowed. Try. A fight broke out. Guards charged, swords clashing against Draken's claws as he partially shifted. Mira hurled fireballs, singeing armor and forcing retreats. Tom hung back, whispering to her, Lass, your father knows about your power? He's scared. Elena told him everything. Mira's heart sank. Betrayal stung fresh. She blasted a flame at a guard's feet, making him flee. The others followed, leaving threats in their wake. Panting, Drakon turned to her. Are you hurt? No, she said, though her hands shook. But they're coming back. Stronger. He pulled her close. Then we'll be ready. You're not alone anymore. That night, as they bandaged minor cuts by the fire, Mira leaned against him. The kiss lingered in her mind, a promise amid the chaos. Her powers were awakening, but so was her heart. And with Drakon by her side, she felt ready for whatever storm her family brewed. But in Eldridge, Elena plotted with their father, whispering lies about the monster and the traitor daughter. The real battle was just beginning. The days following the skirmish with her father's guards blurred into a mix of training, quiet moments, and growing unease. Mira's powers were no longer just sparks. They were a steady flame she could summon at will. She practiced in the cavern until her muscles ached, hurling fire at moving targets Drakon set up with ropes and pulleys. Each success brought a rush of pride, but also a reminder of the danger. Her family knew now, and that knowledge was a weapon in their hands. One crisp morning, as frost clung to the mountain ledges, Drakon led her to a new part of the lair, a hidden chamber behind a waterfall of steam from underground springs. The room was humid, walls glistening with moisture, and in the center stood a pedestal with a glowing crystal, red like a captured ember. "This is the dragon's heart," Drakon explained, his voice echoing softly. "It amplifies power, but it's dangerous for beginners." Mira approached, feeling the crystal's pull. Her own fire responded, warming her from within. "What does it do?" "Test your control," he said. "Touch it, and it will show you visions, past, present, maybe future. But if you're not ready, it overwhelms." She hesitated, glancing at him. His face was serious but encouraging. "I'll try." Placing her hand on the crystal, Mira felt a surge. The world faded, replaced by images. Her mother, young and fierce, standing in a circle of dragons, fire weaving around her like a cloak. Then her father, arguing with Leora, his face twisted in fear. "You're a monster!" he shouted in the vision. Leora fled, pregnant, hiding her secret in Eldridge. The visions shifted to the present. Elena, in their family home, whispering to a cloaked figure, maps spread on a table. They were planning an attack, not just on Drakon, but to capture Mira for her power. Finally, a glimpse of the future. Mira and Drakon, side by side in battle, flames uniting in a blaze that lit the night. But shadows loomed, hinting at loss. Mira pulled away, gasping, collapsing to her knees. Drakon caught her, holding her steady. "What did you see?" "Everything," she whispered, tears streaming. "My mother was in Birkin." Father knew and drove her away. "Elena, she's coming for us. And the future. It's war." Drakon's arms tightened around her. "We'll change it. Visions are warnings, not fate." She buried her face in his chest. His heart beat strong against her ear. In that moment, vulnerability turned to comfort. He stroked her hair, murmuring words of reassurance. "You're strong, Mira." Stronger than they know. They stayed like that until her breathing steadied. When she looked up, his eyes held a depth of emotion that mirrored her own. "Thank you," she said, "for believing in me." He kissed her forehead, then her lips, a gentle affirmation. "Always." The vision spurred them to action. Drakon began fortifying the lair, setting traps along the paths, pits covered with leaves, boulders rigged to roll. Mira helped, using her fire to seal cracks where intruders might slip through. They worked in tandem, their movements synchronized like a dance. In the evenings, they shared stories to ease the tension. Drakon spoke of his human days, before the curse, a young man in love with a village girl who betrayed him to the sorcerer. "I thought love was weakness," he admitted one night by the fire, his hand in hers. "But with you, it's strength." Mira squeezed his fingers. "I never thought I'd find this. Back home, I was invisible. You're everything here," he said, pulling her closer. Their kisses grew more passionate, the fire between them literal and figurative. Mira's powers flared with her emotions, flames dancing harmlessly around them like fireflies. But peace was fleeting. A week later, as they patrolled the lower slopes, they found signs of intrusion, broken branches, footprints in the mud. Drakon sniffed the air. They're close. Scout's Mira's heart raced. What do we do? Confront them, he said, shifting partially, wings unfolding. They tracked the scouts to a camp in the woods. 3 men huddled around a fire, maps in hand. Mira recognized one as a village hunter. Drakon burst from the trees, roaring. The men scrambled, drawing weapons. Leave now, Drakon commanded. One man laughed nervously. Lord Harlan offers gold for the girl, says she's cursed. Mira stepped out, flames wreathing her hands. Tell him his daughter is free, and if he comes, he'll burn. The men fled, but not before one shot an arrow. It grazed Draken's arm, drawing blood. Mira rushed to him, pressing a cloth to the wound. Are you okay? Just a scratch, he said, wincing. Back at the lair, she bandaged it carefully, her touch lingering. That night, worry kept her awake. She slipped into Drakon's chamber, finding him staring at the stars through a skylight. Can't sleep? He asked. No, she admitted, sitting beside him. I'm scared. He wrapped his good arm around her. Me too, but we'll fight. Their closeness led to more, kisses turning to caresses under the starlight. For the first time, Mira felt truly cherished, her body and soul embraced without judgment. It was a night of discovery, of love blooming amid the storm. The next day, invigorated, they planned defenses. Mira's visions guided them. She knew Elena's weak points, her jealousy. She wants what I have, Mira said. Use that. Drakon nodded. We'll set a trap. As they worked, a messenger bird arrived, carrying a note from Tom. Attack in 3 days. Be ready. Not all follow Harlan blindly. Hope flickered. Maybe not everyone in Eldridge saw her as the enemy. With time short, training intensified. Mira learned to merge her fire with Drakon's, creating blasts that could melt stone. Their bond deepened, each touch a reminder of what they fought for. But on the eve of the attack, Mira had another vision at the crystal. Betrayal from within. Someone close would turn. She told Drakon, fear gnawing. Who? We'll watch, he said, holding her tight. As darkness fell, the mountain seemed to hold its breath. Mira stood ready, fire in her veins, love in her heart. The awakening was complete. Now came the test. The morning of the anticipated attack dawned gray and heavy, clouds hanging low over the mountain like a shroud. Mira stood on the ledge outside the lair, her breath visible in the chill air. She wrapped her arms around herself, the simple wool cloak Drakon had given her, providing little warmth against the biting wind. Below, the forest was still, too still, as if the animals sensed the coming storm. Her mind raced with the visions from the dragon's heart, flames, battles, betrayal. She touched her lips, remembering the night before, the way Drakon's touch had made her feel alive, wanted, but love was a fragile thing in the face of war. Drakon joined her, his presence a solid comfort. He carried a satchel of supplies, dried meats, water skins, and herbs for healing. They're coming, he said, his voice calm but edged with steel. I can smell them on the wind. Mira nodded, summoning a small flame to her palm for warmth. How many? 24, maybe more. Your father's men, plus mercenaries. Elena leads them, the name twisted in her gut. Her sister, once a playmate, now an enemy driven by envy. She wants my power. Or to destroy it. Drakon placed a hand on her shoulder. She won't get it. We've prepared. They had. The paths were rigged with traps, vines that would ensnare, rocks that would avalanche at a pull of a rope. Mira had infused some with her fire, creating barriers that would ignite on command. Inside the lair, they had stockpiled weapons, Drakon's ancient swords, and her growing arsenal of flame spells. As the sun climbed higher, a horn sounded from the valley. Figures emerged from the trees, armored and determined. At the front rode Elena, on a white horse, her hair braided like a warrior queen, a sword at her side. Beside her, Lord Harlan, Mira's father, looked older, his face lined with grim resolve. Drakon shifted partially, scales rippling across his skin. Stay behind me until it's time? But Mira shook her head. No, we're in this together. The group approached the base of the mountain, stopping just out of arrow range. Elena cupped her hands to her mouth. Sister, come out. Father wants to talk. Mira stepped forward, Drakon at her side. What do you want, Elena? Their father dismounted, his voice carrying up the slope. Mira, this madness ends. You're my daughter. Come home. The beast has twisted you. The only twist is your lies. Mira shouted back, her voice steady. Mother's secret, you knew. Harlan's face paled. Leora was dangerous. I protected you. By selling me? Flames flickered at her fingertips. Elena smirked. Look at you, playing with fire. But you're weak, always have been. Give up, and we'll spare the dragon. Drakon growled, but Mira raised a hand. Leave now, or face us. Negotiations crumbled. Harlan signaled, and the men charged, climbing the paths with ropes and hooks. Drakon roared, unleashing his wings and diving down. He swept low, claws raking armor, sending men tumbling. Mira focused, igniting the traps. Vines burst into flame, ensnaring legs and arms. Screams echoed as fire spread. She hurled fireballs, precise and controlled, targeting weapons to disarm rather than kill. I don't want blood, she muttered, but the fight demanded it. A group broke through, reaching the ledge. Elena led them, her sword drawn. Time to end this, fat sister? The word stung, old wounds reopening. But Mira stood tall. I'm not who you think. They clashed. Elena swung, Mira dodged, summoning a shield of flame that blocked the blade. Sparks flew. Drakon fought nearby, his dragon form a whirlwind of scales and fire breath. Elena pressed, her strikes fast. You think he loves you? He's using you, Mira faltered, doubt creeping. But then she remembered Drakon's kisses, his words. No, you're the user. With a surge, Mira blasted a wave of fire, knocking Elena back. Her sister hit the ground, singed but alive. Yield! Elena spat. Never! She whistled, and more men poured in. From a hidden path. Betrayal. The vision had warned. Drakon shifted back, bleeding from wounds. Mira! The lair! They retreated inside, barring the entrance with a boulder, but cracks allowed arrows to whistle through. Mira sealed them with fire-melted stone, her energy waning. In the main hall, they caught their breath. Drakon winced, clutching his side. You're amazing out there. Mira bandaged him quickly. We can't hold forever. A pounding at the entrance. Harlan's voice, surrender, or we smoke you out. Smoke! They were lighting fires at the base, funneling it up vents. Drakon coughed. The back tunnels. We escape. But Mira had an idea. The heart spring. Its power. They ran to the chamber, smoke thickening. Mira touched the crystal, drawing its energy. Visions flooded, but she focused, channeling it into a massive flame. Stand back, she said. With a cry, she unleashed it. A torrent of fire that burst through the entrance, scattering the attackers. Screams outside, then retreat. The smoke cleared. They emerged to find the paths empty, save for Elena and Harlan, bound by Tom and a few defectors. Tom nodded to Mira. Not all follow blindly, lass. Harlan looked broken. Mira, forgive me. She approached, fire dimming. Mother deserved better. So did I. Elena glared. This isn't over. But for now, it was. The attackers fled, the threat broken. Back inside, Drakon pulled Mira close. You saved us. We did, she said, kissing him. Her awakening was more than power. It was love, strength, a new life. Yet shadows lingered, whispers of greater foes, drawn by her flame. The story was far from done. The attackers had fled, their shouts fading into the wind as they retreated down the mountain, leaving behind scorched paths and broken weapons. The threat was broken, at least for now. Inside the lair, the air was heavy with the scent of ash and the faint hum of the heart springs energy still lingering in Mira's veins. Drakon pulled her close, his arms enveloping her in a warmth that felt like home. His voice, rough from battle but soft with gratitude, rumbled against her ear. "You saved us." Mira rested her forehead against his chest, the steady beat of his heart grounding her. Her hands, still tingling from the fire she'd unleashed, relaxed in his grip. "We saved us," she corrected, her voice quiet but firm. She pulled back to meet his gaze, his ember-like eyes reflecting the firelight. "I couldn't have done it without you." Drakon smiled, a rare, genuine curve of his lips that made her heart skip. "You're stronger than you know, Mira. Stronger than they ever gave you credit for." They stood there for a moment, the cavern's silence wrapping around them like a cocoon. The battle had been fierce but brief, the combination of Mira's newfound fire and Drakon's dragon strength overwhelming her father's men. Tom, the old servant, had stayed behind with a handful of defectors, villagers who had turned against Lord Harlan's greed, unwilling to follow his orders to harm Mira. They had promised to escort Harlan and Elena back to Eldridge, ensuring they faced the village council for their actions. It wasn't justice yet, but it was a start. Mira stepped away, moving to the fire pit in the center of the hall. The flames flickered, casting dancing shadows on the stone walls. She held out her hand, summoning a small flame to dance in her palm, a reminder of the power she'd discovered. "This," she said, watching the fire twist and curl, "it's part of me now." "But it's not all of me." Drakon joined her, his presence steady. "It's a gift, not a burden." "You decide what it means." She let the flame fade, turning to him. "I want it to mean something good. Not revenge, not anger. I want to protect this place, like you do." His eyes softened, and he reached for her hand. "Then we'll do it together." They spent the rest of the day cleaning up. Mira swept away ash from the cavern floor, while Drakon repaired a cracked wall, his strength making quick work of the heavy stones. They moved in sync, a quiet partnership that felt natural. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, they stepped outside to the ledge overlooking the valley. The air was cool, the world below peaceful again. Mira leaned against the rock, her cloak pulled tight against the evening chill. "I used to dream of leaving Eldridge," she said, her voice wistful. "Not like this, though. I thought I'd be running away, not finding something." Drakon stood beside her, his shoulder brushing hers. "What did you find?" She looked at him, her heart full. "You, this mountain, myself." He turned to face her, his hand finding hers. "I was alone for centuries. I thought it was my fate. But you changed that." Her cheeks warmed and she squeezed his hand. "I was invisible back home. Too big, too plain. But here I feel seen." "You are," he said, his voice low. He leaned in, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that was soft at first, then deepening with a quiet intensity. The warmth in her chest flared, not with fire, but with something deeper, something that felt like love. When they parted, she rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. They sat on the ledge, watching the stars emerge one by one. Drakon pointed out constellations, telling her stories of ancient dragons who had carved their names into the sky. Mira shared memories of her mother, Leora, whose songs now made sense. Lullabies about fire and wings, hints of the Umbercan blood that ran through her veins. "She wanted me to know," Mira said softly. "She just didn't have time." Drakon wrapped an arm around her. "She'd be proud of you." The thought brought tears to Mira's eyes, but they were gentle, not bitter. She had spent so long feeling unworthy, but now, with Drakon's warmth beside her and the power in her hands, she felt whole. The next morning, Tom returned alone, his face weathered but kind. "Your father and sister are confined in Eldridge," he said, sitting with them in the hall. "The council will decide their fate." "They know about your power, Mira, but the village is divided. Some see you as a hero now." Mira nodded, the weight of her old life lifting. "Let them decide." "I'm not going back," Tom smiled. "Good. You belong here, lass." He left them with supplies from the village, grains, fruits, and a letter from a few villagers, apologizing for their silence during Harlan's reign. Mira read it, her heart softening. Not everyone had rejected her. Days turned into weeks, and the lair became a true home. Mira and Drakon worked together, tending the grove, training her powers, and sharing quiet moments by the fire. She learned to weave her flames into intricate patterns, creating light shows that danced across the cavern walls. Drakon taught her to fly with him, her arms wrapped around his neck as he soared in dragon form, the wind carrying her laughter. One evening, as they sat by the heart spring, its glow reflecting in their eyes, Mira spoke the words she'd been holding. "I love you," she said simply, her voice steady. Drakon's face lit up, and he pulled her close. "I love you too, Mira." "More than I thought possible." They kissed, the spring's light wrapping around them like a blessing. The mountain, once a place of fear, was now their sanctuary, a place where they could build a life free from judgment. The threat from Eldridge faded, the village council choosing exile for Harlan and Elena, sending them far from the mountains. Mira felt no need for revenge. She had what she wanted: freedom, love, and a purpose. Her fire was a gift, one she'd used to protect the land alongside Drakon. As winter approached, they stood on the ledge, watching snow dust the valley. Mira leaned into Drakon, his warmth shielding her from the cold. "This is enough," she said. "Just this?" He kissed her forehead. "It's everything." And so, in the heart of the mountain, Mira found her place, not as a rejected daughter, but as a woman of fire, loved and whole.